All right, great. So, hello everyone, and I'm Karan. And before we dive into the session, a little bit background about me. So, I'm myself a developer, a designer, and also a developer relations professional. And right now, I manage developer relations at GitHub, specifically for the India region. And in the past, I've been with various companies of all sizes and scale, like DigitalOcean, which is one of the famous developer cloud platforms, Exotel, which is a cloud telephony platform, and Automation Anywhere, which is one of the leaders in the robotic process automation software. And I've worked on DevRel programs of various different sizes and scale, and helped across with various different companies as well on on a pro bono basis as well. Um, so this is a little bit background about me, and like how Dyson mentioned, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, or rather my main topic, is how do you measure the value of DevRel programs. So uh, a quick interesting anecdote over here, is I was there once, at one of my previous companies. I don't want to mention which one exactly, and sitting with the head of the product, and then he asked me that, hey, since you've been in DevRel for a while, how exactly do you measure what's the value that you get out of your program? What is the value that you deliver to developers, as well as what is the value that you deliver to the business? And that was an interesting thing. And I realized then that it's something which many of them have. Many of them have that question as to how do you even really measure the value of developer programs. And the reason why there is so much of a thought, or so much of uh, curiosity and confusion, is because, like how all of us do, developer relations is at the intersection of multiple functions. So it's not just a single function, very similar to how many of the traditional functions might be in companies, but it's at the intersection of multiple ones. And I believe this is probably a very high level overview diagram of what this intersection looks like. Interestingly, before going live over here, I was looking at some of the other sessions, and one of the speakers as well was showing a similar diagram. So it is really interesting to see how all of us are aligned in terms of how we think about developer relations itself. So again, these are just some of the examples. So it's a little bit of product, a little bit of engineering, marketing, customer relations, operations, etc. So while what individually these specific things are could vary based on your role and based on which company you are in, I think all of us know and agree that it varies. It's not just one thing. Uh, and the reason why it is kind of like a little bit tricky is in terms of measuring the value of developer programs, is even though this as a function, developer relations is kind of constituted by some of the other traditional functions. The key difference is, all of these functions like product or engineering or operations, etc., they have, some industry standard metrics for measuring value. So if you think about product or engineering or others, there are some industry standard metrics. And to give you an idea of what this is like, so let's take a real quick look of what this really is. So if you take a look at something like product, right? So, and these are again very, very high level examples, right? So say for users, the value that they would be getting out of specifically the product teams, or rather, if you look at it, what value is the product team delivering for end users? It could be something like the inherent value of the product itself. So by creating that product, whatever value that product is supposed to deliver, they're delivering that. And also, to some extent, they're probably even delivering things like cost savings. Again, these are examples. These could be very different. And what they're delivering to the business could be things like product adoption, product usage, how much usage is happening for that specific product, and also something like retention, to ensure that those who are already using the product continue to do so and are not dropping off. Yeah. So let's take a look at one other example. Engineering. So what value is an engineering team, delivering to their end users? They are delivering high availability and reliability, based on their engineering efforts. Probably they're delivering something like a better security. And again, the list goes on. There are various different things when you lay it out on different levels of abstraction. Now, what are they delivering for business? So they're delivering, development velocity, release cycles, errors and bug fixes, etc. Right. So these are some of the ways of which value can be tracked across these teams. And if you look at something like even something probably a little more closer home for DevRel folks is marketing, right? So you have what is a marketing team really delivering? How are they delivering value for users, and how is it being measured? Probably it's being measured by what is the value of the content that they are actually putting out over there, and how much are they aiding the decision making process of people out there, whatever be the audience, and how is the value that they are delivering to the business measured, is probably through something like lead life cycles, how much time does it take to close, how many leads they have got, or how much interest they have got, what stage they are in, etc. Various ways. Again, engagement and reach. How much reach they're getting through their campaigns, how much engagement, what are the channels, and all of those. And then again, there is the content life cycles itself. So how much content they're creating, how much consumption there is, and all of those things, right? So there are these certain ways. Again, just an example of how, if you look at some of these traditional functions that could exist in tech companies or even non-tech companies, there are certain industry standard or de facto ways of how value for all of these functions are measured, and for how it's measured for these programs as well. Now, how do you measure value of DevRel programs? That's the key question, because like how I showed you, there are ways in which how you can deliver or measure value for other functions. So the simple thing that I would really, want all of you to take as a key takeaway, from my session is, in terms of measuring value of DevRel programs, go back to first principles. Yeah. So what those are, I'm going to give you some examples again. So my intention for this session is not to give you very specific KPIs or so, or kind of give you hard coded ways of really measuring the value of DevRel programs, but I want to give you a framework and probably draw upon some of my experiences from the past as well, driving large scale developer relation programs with a lot of investment in terms of how something like this can be measured and what really comes into play. So that's where what I like to call it as some of the key things is the D's of DevRel itself. Now there are multiple D's over here, but for this session, what I'm going to be covering is 3 D's. So 3 key D's that you probably have to think about in terms of how you want to approach measuring the value of DevRel programs itself. The first thing, is, I think most of you might think of it as it's a granted and it's a taken, but nevertheless, let me talk about it. The developer, right? So the developer is at the core of any DevRel program. Now, again, like how I said, you might think it's taken for granted, but let me give you an example of why it's very important to specifically focus on this. So recently, I had gotten a call from one of the companies where they said, hey, we wanted some advice on how to run some of our DevRel programs, and I asked them, all right, so who's your audience? They said developers. Well, okay, I understand your audience is developers, but what kind of developers? And they said, well, the type of one who writes code. I was like, all right, well, that's what usually a developer does, but what specifically are you referring to when you say a developer? Because there are multiple ways, how you can think about it. So it becomes very important to kind of keep developers at the core, and developers must be the core focus of DevRel programs. And the reason why I want to emphasize on this is because I have seen a lot of organizations of all scales thinking of DevRel programs as a means to fuel some of their other functions or some of their other programs, so they probably look at developer relation programs or developer relation functions as a way probably to aid marketing, or as probably just to aid customer relations, or as a way to probably aid product, etc. Right? So it's not really, developers are not really a core focus. If say a product is meant for a business audience, and it so happens that developers also use it, so sometimes an organization creates a specific DevRel function just to aid this team who focuses mainly on a business audience, and the team exists only because developers are also probably just a part of it, so they're not the core of DevRel programs. That's not what the objective that the team would have laid out to. But here I think it's important to recognize that developers must be the core focus of DevRel programs. So the reason why I mentioned, not to take the audience itself for granted as to, yeah, developers are a focus of DevRel programs, is for a few key reasons. Like how I said, developers is a very generic term, So understand the audience more specifically. When you say developers, who are the current developers that you have or you aspire to have? What is the specific technology stack? What are their demographics? What are their interests? What are their geographics? So getting a more specific understanding and have a clarity in terms of what you mean exactly when you say developers. Because think about it, if what you actually are thinking is a developer who writes in say PHP or C++, right? And then you say that, no, well, my programs would probably relate more to someone who writes Golang, etc. Well, one can still say, okay, this is a DevRel program, but are you really doing justice for your program, because you're looking at two separate segments of developers itself? The second thing again is to chalk out the various paths to success you can offer a developer. Now, this is very, very key. When we say put developers at the center of a DevRel program, you need to start looking outside in as well, not just inside out, not just what can, you or your company benefit from developers, but what is it that you really can offer developers to have a path of success for them. And it's really, really important to recognize this. You would be surprised if I tell you how many of the different programs and functions and organizations don't really know what this path to success for a developer really looks like. The third thing is align with company-wide personas, if any. Most often the larger marketing team along with other teams would have created personas for their products. Developers might probably not be one of them, so but see how you can really align your developer audience to a specific persona, even if not fitted directly within this, because then what you can do is you can start kind of showing impact and start rolling up some of your results into that persona, thereby letting the execs and the company know that what you're doing is actually aligning to a larger business audience. Now, how looking at developers as a core way for develop programs, how is this going to help, right? First thing, profiling and understanding your audience helps better serve them and increase engagement. So there is a very well known term called spray and pray. So well, you do everything that you want and then you just pray that it works, right? So instead of that, you profile your audience, understand what they want, and then you do targeted programs specifically for that, based on whatever it is. If you're looking at geographics, if you say I want to do this specific program for developers of this tech stack in Hong Kong SAR or in India or some other place, etc., right? So this having targeted programs will usually yield better results. And then third thing is this will help you align to company objectives, and it will help you better strategize your approach, right? So again, this is again something which probably you might say, hey, well, this is what every DevRel program does, but I want you to think a little more deeper about this. The second very, very, very important thing, the second D that I want to talk about is data. And this, I would say, is very, very important. So one of the really famous business slash management expert once said that if you measure it, you can improve it. Peter Drucker, So again, you might be really very thinking that, hey, well, we of course do measure it, but are you measuring the right things? Say for example, you run a DevRel program for increasing content consumption. What would you be measuring? You would probably be measuring how many page views, how many probably social engagement, or things like that. But uh, what is it that you will be able to derive out of that? What is the value that you can actually show? Because I always say program level metrics and measurement is different compared to business level metrics and measurement. So from a program level, you always of course want to measure how the specific program is performing, but you need to measure from a business level as well as to what this program is performing. A few key things is, firstly, understand what data is being collected, and if, excuse me, if there's a gap, you need to fix it. So it's not just about what is the campaign or what is the program that you're running, but what data are you collecting specific to the developer, or specific to the product, or specific to some of the other intelligence that you would need around the user, etc. Whatever be it, understand what is being first collected, and then if you find there's a gap, try to fix it, get that data. Second is, look at the story that the data tells you, even before you start jumping in, and it's very, very easy to get drowned in data, right? So, and my really strong, understanding and feeling, and which I recommend to everyone out here, is a DevRel professional must always be proficient, in handling data, managing data, and interpreting data, for the only reason and for the core reason being, that's the only way to kind of show impact for DevRel programs, So if you think about it, if you're thinking of marketing, sales, engineering, product, etc., there are multiple systems that would already be in place, off the shelf or custom built as well, to show what's happening. Whereas for us as DevRel professionals, we need to get the data from various different ways, bring it all together, and see what story that tells you. Sometimes it's helpful to try to measure this in real time, so do that if possible. And one of the other, again, more important things is understand the journey of a developer through data. See what journey a developer is taking. What is the data telling you? If you look at say product consumption, page views, or whatever it is, right? And then again, the most important thing when you're comfortable with the data is to draw connections between data and the KPIs. This is very, very, very key, and this is only possible when you're comfortable, with the data. I'll give you an example. In one of my programs, I was able to relate back to a person, a developer, attending a webinar, and then showing and saying that, hey, because this person has been attending a few webinars or online sessions, etc., and consuming content, their spend on this business has actually increased by X specific number of dollar value. That's something that would that execs and management team would really love to see, because that is as direct as it could get. Well, of course, I was not selling anything to the developers through any of the programs, but through data, I was able to show that. But the most important thing is be objective. Yeah. So it's very easy. There is, again, among statisticians, there is saying that you can make data speak whatever you want it to be, right? But it's always important to be objective about the data that you're looking at, and to ensure you're talking about the whole picture. And how this helps is, when you have proper data, you can compare outcomes of various programs and then prioritize. So you have program A and program B, and and you're having a similar baseline for both of this, right? So you can then go back and then say, I'm going to run this program because this is the data and this program worked out better. And then, with the help of data, you can also see if your programs are helping other programs and or business objectives. Again, very important. It need not be your program is directly creating impact for DevRel as a function, but if it is helping marketing or product or engineering, etc., you should be able to show that through data as well, which shows an impact across the business because of your function and not just your own program. And then again, you'll be able to monitor trends and take a very proactive action based on the data that you're seeing. So I would say make the data speak for itself, but ensure that you have the data and you're looking at it the right way. So the last thing, the 3D, the third D that I would talk about, again, the most important thing is dollar. And when I say dollar, I mean the investment and the money that go into it, like how most of you might know, and which is how it would be in most of the companies. DevRel programs usually don't have, any money targets or any financial targets per se. But again, just remember, in a business, investments are linked to outcomes, right? So if you want more investment for your function or your program, you need to show outcomes that means something to even the financial folks and the business execs, right? So how do you do this? How do you measure this? One is understand what the investment towards DevRel means really for the business or for that specific function. Yeah. So look at, say just a very high level example. If there is X amount that is being invested for this program, which is probably just 1/100th of what is the marketing budget, so you can get an idea of what this investment really means for the business. And then also ask questions and understand what the business outcomes you're expected to drive with that investment. That will give you a lot more clarity, in terms of what you really have to put forward. And the last thing, again, very, very important thing is observe what other influence are your programs creating in other parts of the business, not just for your function, but is it helping sales? Is it helping partner programs? Is it helping marketing, engineering, product, etc.? Because if you're able to show an indirect influence across various different verticals of your business or functions within your business, the more will it help you show and attribute a dollar value for your programs and for your investments itself. So like how I said, how it helps is it helps you first prioritize programs and investments based on the budgets, and also to show indirect influence or impact to the business targets. So so this is a very quick high level kind of a framework and a thought process that I wanted to share with all of you in terms of how do you think about measuring the value of DevRel programs when it comes to showing business impact as well as helping the developers who are your core audience. So I'm just a couple of minutes away from my time, so that's it that I had for all of you. So thanks a lot for having me. If you have again any questions, please feel free to hit me on Twitter or LinkedIn, etc. And I'd be happy to answer them for you. Over to you, Dyson.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks for the talk. Yeah, it was great talk for the measurement, and I really like the 3Ds. So we have a few minutes, so I'm gonna just ask you one question for you. So what is the most difficult in three of these that you have faced in the past, and why is that?
Right. So on a quick thing, right? So the dollar, is definitely the most difficult one, like how you might expect it to be as well, because when you look at developer and data, it's just a matter of identifying and then fixing it and getting it done. But when you look at dollar, that's where it's challenging, because what what a ROI means, a return on investment means for each business, for each program, for each function, for each product is very, very, very different. In some cases, it's very easy. If you were to sell, a very well packaged product or a product that is very free, it's easy. But if you were to look at an enterprise product, where the developer relations play is very, very different, the dollar value attribution becomes very different over there.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty difficult for us, our activities, to connect to the actual revenue sales. Yeah, but yeah, I'll keep in mind for my company as well. Okay, yeah. So thanks for your talk. If you have audiences, if you have any further questions, you can ask them in on the Twitter or YouTube. So that Karan would be happy to answer for you guys. So thanks, Karan, and we are now going to close the session.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Dyson, and thanks everyone for tuning into the session. Have a great rest of the conference. I was looking at the schedule. There are some really awesome sessions coming in that I'm looking forward to attending myself as well. So thanks everyone.